really need you guys to do today, and for right now, is just to listen, and I will go through these set of notes. And then for that time that we have left, I would like you to write down these notes, and then you can submit them. So remember, what we have here is you would write the topic, tissues, part 1, and then the essential question, you would write this down too. And our next topic that we are going to be working on for the upcoming weeks is tissue. And I'm not talking about blow your nose tissue, Kleenex tissue. I'm talking about tissues of the body. So this is our next topic. Now, I have a lot of pictures in here and a lot of words, and there are some more graphic pictures in some of these. So please be aware that there's one picture of a burn of a person's hand that's burnt. There is also a picture of a person who got a hockey skate that was cut right here. And again, with anatomy, sometimes we're going to see things that may be uncomfortable to look at. And if you are uncomfortable to look at it, I understand. So make sure in your notes that you have this written down, topic, tissues, part 1, and the essential question. Now, I'm going to be going through this rather quickly, so you won't have time to write it all, and I don't expect you to write it right now. So if you go, wait, go back, I didn't get that, it's not because I am like waiting for you to finish. I'm going to have you write it at your own pace. So you can take pictures of it and submit it to me that way through Schoology. If there is, and you can't do it that way on Thursday when we have quiet time, you can put on your screen and show it to me, okay? So this is everything that I want you to write down for this slide, and notice it's in pink. So anything that's in pink is what you write, okay? So let's take a look and just take a look at this graphic. It's a great graphic because we've already discussed cells and what the parts are of cells. And when even one part of the cell doesn't function properly, you can end up with a disease or syndrome. And that's what you did your big project on. The next project that we're going to have you work on is related to tissues. And believe it or not, your project is going to have to deal with a box. Now, a tissue box is going to work out perfectly, but you can use any type of small box that you might come upon. It doesn't have to be a tissue box, but a tissue box is about the right size, and it's going to be a while before we get to it. So just so that you know, our next project is going to involve writing and creating around a box. So that is our next project. So what is a tissue and how is it different than cells? Well, cells we know, right? A cell has got that riboplasmic, you know what I mean, reticulum, we've got the Golgi, we've got the nucleus, we've got DNA. And in terms of human cells, we have all got this stuff, but we don't have stuff that's some of the plant cells, and we're not going to worry about that. But what if you get all the cells and you have them do a certain function, okay? That would be what tissue does, all right? So for instance, heart cells are very, very specific cells, and they all work together to do a certain function, okay? Brain cells, you put them all together, they work for a certain function for what the brain needs to do. That is brain tissue. And if you've had psych, you know that there is gray matter and white matter. So there's even more distinctions of the cells that way. Now, if you put a variety of tissues together, for instance, your blood vessels have got different layers of tissues in it. You're going to start to put that together along with your heart cells. And you're going to get together a heart, which is an organ, and then your other parts of organs. For instance, a pancreas, a stomach, a liver. You're going to get those all put together. You put everything that works together as a function. For instance, the heart, the blood vessels, and you're going to get the circulatory system. You put together the pancreas, the liver, the stomach, the intestines, and you're going to get the digestive system. And you put all the systems together and you end up with an organism of a human, okay? So great distinction of how you start with the smallest and you end up with the largest, which is a human being, which is the organism. Now, what I have here is a very, very funky slide. So let me explain this to you. I do want you to copy this chart of the systems of how we start out with cells, and then we go to tissues. When you look to the right, you're going to see tissues split up into 4 major ones: epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscle tissue, and nervous tissue. We are going to spend the most time on epithelial tissue because it's a huge part of us as humans. And when you look, and when we talk about it even more today, you're going to notice how even more specific it is, because there's specific types of epithelial tissue. Then after that, we'll talk about connective tissue, and then we'll give just the tiniest amount of effort into muscle tissue and neural tissue. Not so much time, but some time to it. So what do I need you to write for this slide? You need to do the pink stuff, which has the orientation. But see how I have this pink, but it's highlighted? It says copy this chart, but not this. So don't write in your notes, copy this chart, but not this. I don't need you to do that, okay? What I do need you to do is write an orientation to tissues of the body, and then the chart that goes along and splits up into the different types of tissues, okay? So today, our plan is to just talk about epithelial tissue. So what is tissue? I've already told you. It's a bunch of cells all grouping up together to do the same function. So you put a bunch of cells that become heart cells, you have them do its specific function. You have the liver that's made up of cells, and that is specific tissue. So that is going to create a certain function. Sometimes some organs have different types of tissue put all together to make it a certain organ, okay? But take a bunch of cells, have it do all a certain function, you've got tissue. And that's not that tissue. But remember, you're going to need a box similar to that size. All right. If you love looking at a microscope and you love to be a little of a sleuth person, this career might be there for you, which is a histologist, or you like to study tissue, histology. So, for instance, when people get a biopsy taken and that's a sample of the tissue, and it goes to a person who actually looks underneath a microscope and sees if that tissue is normal or abnormal. And if it is abnormal, they can go and sleuth in some more to identify what is wrong with that tissue. Okay, so histology, study of tissue. Next, we already talked about this, but these are the 4 types. Today, extensive amount of time for epithelial tissue because there's so many different types. We'll spend one or part of a day on connective and part of a day on those last 2, the muscular and neural. And the reason why is when we get to the muscular system and the neural system, we are going to spend a lot of time on that tissue in itself. So that is why we're not going to spend much time on it now. We're saving it for later. Today, epithelial. Next day in our tissue unit will be connective, and then just a small smidgen for the muscular and neural cell. And as you can see, they all are kind of different in what they look like. Epithelial, this is only one shape of epithelial. And then there's some connective tissue, there's muscles, and there's nerve tissue. So what they did was they took the stomach, they kind of sliced it, and you could see all of the different levels of and the different types of tissue, in which there's all 4 types of tissue in there. Okay, wants attention, so she'll start to bite my. So let's get into epithelial tissues. You know that in medical terminology, A means without. So A means without vascular, meaning it does not have any blood vessels in it. Okay, it is avascular. So epithelial tissue does not have any blood vessels in it, okay? It likes to form a barrier. So in that picture here, we've got skin. So skin is a great barrier to prevent bacteria from getting in. And if it does get in, it can cause harm to the body. So that is a great thing for epithelial tissue to form a barrier. Skin is not the only epithelial tissue there, but that's what we see is visible, okay? It can cover surfaces, so it covers the outside of the body, although it will line the inside of the body surfaces as well. So as you can see in the stomach, this tissue right here is going to be right where the food and slush comes in. Okay, so epithelial tissue is the first lining of the stomach. Okay, it makes up glands. So this morning I went for a jog and I actually kind of sweated because it was just that beautiful out, and I sweated. That's a sweat gland. Okay. When I came home, I noticed my face was kind of oily. And so that is again an oil gland, sweat glands, oil glands. And there's other glands that secrete as well. And the other thing that it is it has what's called a basement membrane. And a basement membrane we'll talk about in a little while. And these cells are very, very close together. Because it's going to form a barrier, it doesn't want to leave a lot of space in between it. Connective tissue does do that. All right. This guy is something that loves to eat dead skin cells. Okay. With our skin cells and epithelial cells in general, epithelial cells will replicate pretty fast. Okay. And it is estimated that the skin and the epithelial cells in your skin will replicate about every 6 weeks. You'll see some new skin cells. What it does is it starts from the inside, because there's many, many layers, and it goes out. And the ones that are on the surface here are the ones that are farthest away from any blood vessels. So it's away from nutrients. They end up dying. They end up flaking off. When you dust, a lot of what you dust is dead skin cells. And this guy, well, or female, I don't know if it's a male or female, loves to eat dead skin cells. So it's usually the storyline of what you should do is vacuum your mattress, because when you sleep, you toss and turn, and then you get skin cells in there, and then you get those guys in there who are like to eat it. And then when you vacuum, you just kind of eliminate some of the skin cells that they would like to munch on. All right, this is the icky one. So don't look if you're not comfortable with it. This is a video about people who get burns, and something that is there to help people with or help burn victims right now. So I'm going to play that. And skin is considered one of the largest epithelial epithelial cells sets on the body. And when it gets burned, there is a huge opportunity for bacteria to get into the body and cause damage. So what they want to do is they want to bandage it. They want to make sure they cover it up, right? But skin cells takes time to regenerate. Here is a new idea that they're proposing.
Skin is the largest organ in the body. And when it's severely burned, it needs to be replaced quickly and massively. The standard techniques that we have now, that takes weeks, months, sometimes. And the reason why people die is because of infections that develop while we're waiting for the skin to heal. How are you doing pain-wise? Pretty good. Okay. So if we could find a way to get normal, healthy skin, as much of it as we want, within a week, that's the holy grail in burn surgery. George Gerlach thinks he's found a way, but he'll need a gun.
We call it a skin cell gun, a device for the deposition of skin cells onto the wound.
It looked like something you'd see in Star Wars.
This is Matt Urim, state police officer from Pennsylvania. He's one of the first people to be treated with the gun.
I attended a July 5th party at a friend's house, and there was a small bonfire. I was standing next to the bonfire, and an individual decided to throw a cup of gasoline on the fire. The worst part was my face. It was the whole right side of my face here, my ear, my neck, and my shoulder, and the entire top part of my arm.
Urim had suffered severe second-degree burns. This photo shows what a second-degree burn looks like.
The arm kind of looked like a piece of charred meat, like like a hot dog that was left on a grill too long. The doctor said that I might be a candidate for this new procedure, which is the spray gun, and asked me if I would be interested.
Skin cell spraying is like paint spraying. Just you need a more sophisticated device, like computer controlled. We isolate cells from the healthy part of the skin, the patient's own cells, which can be taken in a water solution, and that solution is prepared for cell spraying.
Basically what they were doing was taking my stem cells from my skin and putting them all in the gun and spraying it on my arm.
Scientists have been able to regenerate sheets of skin for decades. The problem is it takes weeks for that skin to grow, and the new skin is extremely fragile. Gerlach's gun solves both of these problems.
It takes like 1.5 hours to take the biopsy, to isolate the cells, and to spray the cells.
This is what Yoram's skin probably looked like before treatment. This is what it looked like 4 days after it was sprayed with his own stem cells.
And trust me, that is amazing to have it recover that fast.
That Monday, and the burn unit said it was healed, completely healed.
Though the skin gun is still experimental, over a dozen
Do you see all the
patients have already
speckles?
been successfully treated.
All right. So, I see something in the chat, just so that you're getting some more time for yourself. Again, these are different other types of burns. And again, when your body is going to be at risk of infection because you have that barrier gone, you can do, again, a salve sometimes to cover it. This is a much minor burn. And sometimes if it's too deep and it keeps bleeding, you want to sew it up. So this person's finger is sutured as well. All right, so let's take a look at the functions. And again, this is in pink. These are all the different things that epithelial tissue does for your body. Now, this is an example of a coffee filter, but some people may not know what those are because now they have all of those K-cups and everything. But I had it there because what your skin does, it will filter through things. So my skin, if I wanted to put lotion on, it would filter through and absorb the oil. But if I wanted to put, for instance, this on top, it doesn't really absorb it. So it protects, it excretes, whether it's going to excrete hormones, whether it's going to excrete sweat, or is it going to secrete oil. It will also filter through things, as I explained. It also wants to be a sensation trigger. So I have all of those things on the bottom. What you taste, you touch, you hear, you smell, and you see, all of those are connected with epithelial tissue. So it has sensories in it, okay? All right, another great thing about epithelial tissue is because it's always regenerating, it can regenerate pretty darn fast as compared to other tissues. As we go through, the connective tissue can repair itself, but not as fast. And then when you get to neural tissue, it barely repairs itself at all. Epithelial tissue can definitely repair itself and can repair itself rather quickly, especially stomach cells. And as you can see right here, this is that classic picture of mitosis where the pieces of genetic material are getting pulled apart and then it splits and then you end up with 2 new cells. Okay. Now, here's another picture I'm going to ask you to try and draw as best as you can. You don't have to draw all of this, but just to get an idea, because epithelial cells, because they've got so many jobs, they're kind of different, and how we organize them is based on their shape and how many layers. So if you take a look over here, this is 1 and 2 is only 1 layer, as well as 4 is 1 layer, and 3, 5, and 6, those are multiple layers. Multiple layers are called stratified. If it's single layers, we call it simple. Okay, so I do want you to write in pink the epithelial cell organization. Number 1, shape, 2 layers. Draw some of this, but don't write this. Okay, so if we're going to label, this is how we label. First of all, if it's going to be one layer, that's simple. If it's many layers, we call it stratified. That's the first one. We have to look at it first. And then we look at its shape. If it's flat, it's squamous. If it's a cube shape, we call it cube. And if it's rectangular or columnar shape, we call that then columnar. So tall columns. So we've got a variety of different ways that we would like to share how we call these epithelials and what their roles are. Okay. Again, nice different ways to look at this chart. You don't have to copy any of this chart. So this would be, this picture right here would be simple squamous. This picture right here would be simple because it's one layer and in a cube shape. So simple cuboidal. This one, columns, and we call it simple columnar. All of these are many layers. So all of these are stratified. Stratified squamous, stratified cuboidal, and stratified columnar. Okay. All right. Simple squamous, pardon me. You might take a look at it like this, and it's got some forms, some functions, and where it is found. We call it filtration, so it's going to filter through, and in this case, what it's going to filter through are gases. Oxygen is going to be absorbed, and carbon dioxide is going to be let go, okay? Nice to have it only one cell layer, okay, because we want to make sure that these gases can get through. All right. Simple cuboidal, we would find these in the kidneys, and they are, again, one layer, shape of a cube, like a Rubik's Cube, and they want to secrete as well as absorb, and what they're going to be secreting and absorbing is water, salts, things like that, and you would find those in your kidneys. So different shape, different type of things of what it's going to absorb. In the kidneys, we're talking about solids. In the lungs, we're going to talk about gases that it's going to go through. Okay. Stratified, so many, many, many layers of flat square cells. We are going to find and look at those. We're going to find them being multi-layer. They are protective, and we find those lining body cavities. Okay, so they line body cavities. Now, what do they all stick to? Because, for instance, even if you look at this, my skin is attached to something, and it's attached to this thing called the basement membrane. And the basement membrane, ladies and gentlemen, are what these Packer colors look like. Basically, it's a glue, the best way we could say it, and it's underneath your cells, and it acts to make sure that it sticks. So if you've ever kind of like peeled away and you're like, oh, and you notice that sticky thing, basically the basement membrane, okay? All right, tattooing, how does that work? How do you get a tattoo and how does it stay? Because a lot of people, for instance, are going to get sunburn, or you have dyeing some frosting for your vanilla cupcake, and you're going to get some of the dye on your skin and it fades out. How come a tattoo will stay? And the reason why a tattoo stays, and I'm going to go back one, is that the ink goes through the layers of the epithelial cells down past this basement membrane and sticks the ink down this far. And when it sticks it down this far, these cells don't work their way up. These cells work their way up and start to shed off. These things down here don't in skin. So that is how a tattoo works, okay? All right, I think the next picture is going to be the gross picture as well. So if you don't want to look, don't look, and I'll chit chat about it. Here is a guy who got cut with a hockey skate, and look at that huge open wound. Now, in this case, you're going to want to protect it by sewing it up, okay? So not only did you go through the skin, and many, many layers of the skin, through the basement membrane, underneath, even farther down. So in this case, it's best off to do a bunch of stitches. So here you can see the person's face, and right over here, this was all stitched up. It's kind of covered, and this guy did a really good job by kind of growing out his hair over here, so it kind of looks like a mustache. And again, what did they use? They use sutures. You can use sometimes medical tape. Sometimes you can even use staples, depending on it. Okay. And the best thing and one of the best things that skin can do, based on the amount of pigment that is in it, is it can provide a sense of UV protection. So instead of using sunblock, sometimes people who have a lot of pigment in their skin have a natural sunblock. So it can almost be like a SPF of 15. For me, I would probably be right around here, I think. So I do wear skin protection in the summer on my face all the time just to protect, but sometimes it comes off, with time. But especially in the sun, I like to do that. All right, that is it for today's set of notes. I am going to stop talking now. You guys have 20 minutes to